First, I want to start with an article from Ministry Magazine, which is an official organ of the SDA Church that they send out to, well, clergy generally speaking, but their clergy. This was written in June of 1964 by Ralph Watts, who was the then vice president of the General Conference. It is titled The Attitude of Seventh-day Adventists Towards Islam. It is linked in the description box for those that would like to access it for themselves. The first quote is a little long, but I want us to read the whole thing to see the point that's being made. Notice. He writes, quote, "A most striking example of God's attitude toward a heathen power is that of Nebuchadnezzar, the great king of the idolatrous Babylonian Empire. According to the Bible record, God gave him 2 dreams that we know of, and he therefore was in this respect the agent of God. Nebuchadnezzar did many things for God, but often in the wrong way. In Jeremiah 25:9, the Lord refers to Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, as my servant. We conclude that to receive prophetic inspiration does not mean that the recipient always understands or knows God's way. Here was a heathen king, the monarch of the world's most powerful empire, entrusted with prophetic dreams he did not understand, classed by God as his servant, and raised up by omnipotence to punish apostate Judaism. God used an idolatrous power with a limited knowledge of truth to accomplish his desired end for that particular time. The servant of the Lord says, in every age, there is a new development of truth, a message of God to the people of that generation." That's Ellen White. The attitude of the omnipotent one toward these heathen nations strengthens the thought that there has been but one true religion on earth, the religion of God, to which believing men have belonged at all times and places. Each of the messengers of God who has taken part in revealing the nature of the religion of God, although limited in scope and understanding, has been a stone in the building of that Ephesus. Therefore, it seems to me that as Seventh-day Adventists, raised up by God in these latter days as the restorers of the breach, we should regard Islam as a religion which was designed, at least in its beginning, to enlighten the masses, and with the recognition that the Lord permitted Islam to rise with the fundamental mission to teach belief in monotheism, the judgment, acceptance of the holy prophets, and to establish some truths to nations in the Middle East who were steeped in pagan superstition and philosophies. According to the scriptures, we also accept the fact that we are the spiritual descendants of Abraham, and as such, we hold in common with the Muslims certain principles of truth which God first revealed to him. In the same respect, we are spiritual Israel to Jews. To Catholics and to Protestants, we're the restorers of the apostolic faith. If we can establish this point, then it is clear that Seventh-day Adventists are true friends of Islam, the same as friends of Jews, Protestants, and Catholics, and the Muslim can count himself a brother with us without the rejection of all his own beliefs and practices. Close quote. So, using the example of Nebuchadnezzar, he makes a parallel to Muhammad, who he claims was raised up by God, though evil, to be used by God to enlighten the masses on the fundamental truths of monotheism, the judgment, acceptance of the Old Testament prophets, and some other truths to nations in the Middle East. Muhammad, in fact, was one of the stones building the same edifice as the Christian church. That's what the end of that first paragraph said. And since Muslims consider themselves to be descendants of Abraham, like Adventists do, and hold to these supposed general truths, Adventists should be true friends of the Islamic faith and should count them as a brother or sister without them having to reject all of their own beliefs. He's saying the same way that they view, so he is kind of putting on a level of, you kind of have to know the inside baseball to understand what he's saying there. Because he mentions, he's like, well, Islam is basically amongst, just like we view Catholics and Protestants as friends, we view Jews as friends, we should also view Muslims as friends, because all of these groups, we all hold to this malaise of these sort of general truths. And so they're getting at this idea that Muhammad, even though he was a wicked man, but Muhammad was still used by God as an edifice in building the Christian church because he helped establish these general Christian truths over in the Middle East. So in that sense, we should consider Muslims to be friends of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and see them as brothers because, well, they hold to these same general truths. That's saying, well, these general truths that's why Muhammad was raised up, is he was raised up by God to spread these general truths in the Middle East that are Christian in origin.
There are so many things that Catholics can do to combat discrimination. One of the things I think in our everyday lives that's important is to not let uncharitable or untrue comments about Muslims slide by. You know, I myself have been in so many things where someone will say something about Muslims that's a gross generalization or something that's not true. And even myself, I won't challenge it, or I won't say, hey, I don't think that's quite right. But I think it's really important that we do that. And this is something that Pope Francis has talked about a lot. And that also comes up in the Second Vatican Council documents. It says we have to treat everyone, whether they're Christian or not, as brothers and sisters. And we cannot truly call ourselves children of God if we're not willing to truly honor the humanity in all people. Nostra Aetate was a document issued by the Catholic Church in the Second Vatican Council in 1965. And it was the first time that the Catholic Church not only spoke about Muslims, but spoke about them in a positive and praising sort of way. So the section on Muslims in this document begins with an affirmation or an acknowledgement that the Church holds Muslims in high esteem or with respect and high regard. I think one of the high points in the past 50 years was the outreach of John Paul II and his papacy. He went to many Muslim countries, spoke to many Muslim organizations and groups of clergy and young people, and tried to not only share the message of Catholic teaching on Islam with Muslims, but also to demonstrate, I think, to Catholics what it looks like to be in relationship with Muslims. One of the things I always tell Catholics about Catholic-Muslim dialogue is you're probably already doing it. Because if you know someone who's Muslim in your life and you're bringing this positive approach of encounter and openness to those relationships, that is Catholic-Muslim interfaith dialogue. They, like us, are a person of faith who is struggling to put words around the experience of being loved by God.
I studied philosophy and religious studies at Stanford University. I was raised in a Jewish family, and our temple was founded by Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver, who's one of the most famous rabbis in all of America. Later on, I studied early Christianity under the tutelage of Dean Gregg of Memorial Church at Stanford. I learned indigenous Chinese religions like Taoism and legalism, Confucianism, Moism, from two of the preeminent Chinese scholars in the United States. As a teen, I practiced Zen Buddhism and TM, and then later on, I spent 15 years living in a Hindu ashram. And along the way, I've also studied the anthropology and sociology and psychology of almost every religion, from shamanism and Aborigines, and Native American traditions, everything I could find. And my conclusion after all these years of study and personal practice is that without a shadow of a doubt, is that there is a fundamental unity to all religions. On the surface, religions can seem like they're different. In fact, they can seem like they completely disagree with one another. They have very little in common. But really, it's only the dogmatists and the fundamentalists who insist that their religion is completely unique and utterly different than any other religion on the planet. When you scratch beneath the surface, that's not true. Admittedly, at the surface level, of course all the religions are different. You see different espoused beliefs, different rituals, different languages, different claims about who goes where when what happens to them. But that's the surface. When you go below that, you start reading the accounts of the saints and the mystics and the sages and the masters, the people who are actually practicing each of these religions. And then when you practice, what you discover is that all of these religious paths and practices take you to the same place in the end, the same destination. But the only people who actually realize this are those of us who take the time to really practice, to do the religion, to do the religious practices, to go beyond belief into the realm of personal experience. All true religions, what they're doing is they're giving us pathways and vehicles that we can raise our consciousness so that we experience levels of consciousness that we're not even aware of in our everyday life. And whether it's a Buddhist chant or a Christian prayer or a Hindu meditation technique, that's really all they're doing is they're opening and expanding our consciousness. It's a little bit like the analogy of many paths on one mountain lead to the same goal. You can imagine climbing a mountain, and there's many, many different ways to get to the summit of that mountain. You can take this route over here, or there's a route on the other side. One goes straight up, one circles around and meanders its way. One has snow and is cold on this side. The other side has sun exposure and rocky outcroppings. And so while you're walking the paths, it can seem very, very different. And the people who are walking them, if they could talk to each other, would maybe be reporting different experiences. But lo and behold, when you get to the top of the mountain, you realize that everybody has gathered at the same place. We've achieved the same goal. And this is what all the great and true religious paths do. They bring us to the same place, but we can only do this when we put away our dogmatism and put away our childish beliefs and our clinging need to be the one and only way, and we do the hard but profoundly joyful work of practicing these incredibly important and life-changing teachings ourselves.
We are called, as we like to say, to look into one another's eyes in order to see more deeply and in order to recognize the beauty of God in every living human being.
Our advice is to make friends to followers of all religions.
Muy importante porque mi vida religiosa se enriqueció con explicaciones de él. Se enriqueció muchísimo, ¿no? Y supongo que también algunas mías, ¿no? Bueno.
Fue nuestra vocación religiosa la que propició el que nos encontremos en la vida.
No matter from which side of the mountain you are climbing, we should be helping each other so that we can all get to the same place. So there is need for people to make friends.
وألا نبحث عن أوجه الخلافات التي تختص بكل طائفة عن الأخرى.
Personal contact, personal friendship. Then we can exchange deeper level of experience.
Honor other religions like you do your own.
We need to get together and know one another just to discover and explore those commonalities.
That starts a process where prejudices go away, where new insights are born, and where basically hope is born.
It's not complicated. I would say to everyone, start with sharing what we all share, which is the pleasure of conversation.
One of the wonderful things about spending time with people completely unlike you is you discover how much you have in common. The same fears, the same hopes, the same concerns.
I think I'll keep it very simple. It's probably time to talk less, listen more.
അങ്ങനെ വിശ്വസൗഹാർദ്ദ ഒരു യാഥാർത്ഥ്യമാകട്ടെ.
Faith leaders from different religions throughout the St. Louis area set aside their differences tonight.
They joined each other to call for peace and unity. Fox 2's Jeff Bernthal is live with how those leaders hope to make a difference. Jeff.
Well, we had religious leaders from a variety of different faiths inside the Cathedral Basilica here in the Central West End tonight, hoping to set an example of how to come together.
May our leaders listen to us.
A rabbi leading a prayer from the pulpit of the Cathedral Basilica, and religious leaders from varying faiths praying for peace and unity.
Even though there's so much that seems to be driving us apart, there's much more that brings us together.
The service was organized ahead of Tuesday's presidential election and in anticipation of a need for unity.
If you go in most houses of worship, there's a sense of peace, and right now our country needs a measure of peace in this troubled time.
And we feel the church ought to be an example to everybody. So we're in a time now where the nation is deeply divided between red and blue, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, and we feel that we should be the example that if we can come together, then we're encouraging everybody else also to come together during this divisive time that we're in.
Area religious leaders say it is time to set differences aside.
We as people of faith have work to do, and that work is about healing our community and displaying for people what it means to recognize and honor the image of God, even in the other that you don't agree with. If we can't do that from our pulpits and from our beamers and from our platforms, then who can?
And when we work together for our city and for our communities, then certainly in that harmony, we're able to build up. And that's what we're really called to do here, is to build up each other, to build up our communities, and to build up everything that helps us to live better as human beings.
This prayer service here tonight was live streamed for anyone unable to attend or anyone concerned about COVID-19. We have a link that you'll be able to access to see that service with the Fox 2 app. Reporting live from the Central West End tonight, Jeff Bernthal, Fox 2 News.
If I could put it to you this way, and maybe in a Andrew Tate sense, we are brothers. We need to become brothers against evil. Here's what he tweeted out today. I want to show this to you. He says, Christians and Muslims, we are brothers against evil. And he's calling for us to unite. That's going to be the call of the age whenever the Antichrist comes around, is that we're going to have to all unite together because we all have a united evil that we're going to all have to fight against. Here's the original tweet in context. Christians and Muslims, we are brothers against evil. That right there is going to make a lot more sense whenever we redefine the evil as the coming Christ who is dead set on destroying us all. That'll be the mindset, at least in the tribulation period. Now, here's something I want to show you guys. One thing that really fascinates me as I look around the world today, it just seems like, how are we going to unite the world? But there's going to be a guy who's going to be able to pull that off, and he is the Antichrist. And that just, to me, the idea of having a guy come on the global scene that everybody, including Muslims and Catholics and Christians and supposed Christians, are going to be able to unite around this guy. The Jews and the Palestinians are going to be able to unite around this guy. What makes him so special? And I kind of looked it up a little bit, and here's the word that I got in my King James Bible. Okay, I want to show this to you. It's the word wondered. They wondered after him. Revelation 13:3 talks about this Antichrist guy, and really the whole chapter talks about him, his rise to prominence in Revelation 13. He says, I stood upon the sand of the sea and had a beast rise out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were like unto a bear, mouth as a mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So he's going to speak, if you will, from a seat, which is the Catholic word for that is ex cathedra, which is quite telling. But here's what I want you to see in verse number 13. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world, notice that word right there, wondered after the beast. The other verse that I see that uses this word in Revelation 17:6, I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And that, of course, is going to be the whore of Babylon in the book of Revelation chapter 17. So this word wondered is actually pretty interesting. But this Antichrist is going to be able to do something wild, like along the lines of what Andrew Tate is calling for. He's going to be able to unite not only Muslims and supposed fake Christians, he's going to be able to unite Hindus and Buddhists together. He's going to be able to unite Democrats, Republicans, all of them are going to be able to unite. And who are they going to unite against? They're going to unite against Jesus. That's it. That really is the theme of the book of Revelation, really, the second coming of Christ. And they're going to unite against him. This Antichrist will be able to do so. This is a real thing that's going to happen. People are going to unite together. They're going to. And they're going to do so to fight Jesus. Go watch Third Adam. There was a day where I was sitting at my desk and I was studying the false religions of the world. And it all just clicked. The Lord revealed things to me that I just had to get out. And I dedicated a large portion of my time to this. We put documentaries together trying to explain to you this grand illusion that was materializing right before my very eyes. We told you, and we told you, and we told you it was coming. And the reaction was mixed. Some people said this was the greatest thing they'd ever seen. Some people said that I was just another Pharisee, just another false teacher. We'll let the Lord decide. But we've tried to tell you every angle of this that we knew, and we've tried to reveal it to you. This is so wicked that even the Apostle John, when he saw it, he marveled and wondered. So what more is there for me to do? The only thing I can tell you now, stop everything you're doing and go watch Third Adam. Your very soul may be at stake.